Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Celestial Orrery, an honouring Audiobooks original story from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, M.D. Chapter 1. The Scholar's Distress. The persistent drizzle of a late November evening had painted the grimy panes of our Baker Street abode with a sheen of melancholic despair, mirroring, perhaps, the very mood that had settled upon my esteemed companion, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. For weeks the great detective had languished in a state of intellectual torpor, a condition far more alarming to my sensibilities than any fever or ague. His violin, usually a vibrant extension of his profound thoughts, now lay silent in its velvet-lined case. His chemical experiments, typically bubbling with noxious enthusiasm, were inert. Even the ever-present pipe, that faithful conduit of his deepest cogitations, emitted but a desultory wisp of smoke, as if contemplating its own futility. "Watson," he declared abruptly, startling me from my perusal of the British Medical Journal, "the human intellect, much like a finely tuned engine, requires constant lubrication. Without a worthy problem to dissect, it rusts, it stagnates, it becomes, dare I say, commonplace." I lowered my journal, a familiar sigh escaping my lips. "My dear Holmes, you speak as if the very fabric of London society has ceased to weave its usual tapestry of crime. Surely, somewhere within this vast metropolis, there is a villain worthy of your attention." He merely grunted, a low, dismissive sound. "The common villain, Watson, is a predictable creature. His motives are base, his methods crude. A simple burglary, a straightforward murder of passion. These are mere exercises for a junior constable, not for a mind that craves the intricate dance of the unknown." He paused, his grey eyes, usually so keen and penetrating, now clouded with a profound ennui. "No, Watson, what I require is a puzzle, a labyrinth of deceit, a crime that defies the mundane, a whisper of the truly extraordinary." As if on cue, a sharp, insistent rap echoed from the street door below, reverberating through the quiet house. Holmes's head snapped up, a flicker of something akin to anticipation, a nascent spark igniting in his eyes. "Ah, a caller," he murmured, a faint smile playing upon his lips. "And at this hour. Observe, Watson, the subtle nuances of a late-night summons. It speaks of urgency, of desperation, perhaps even of a fear that could not wait for the dawn." Mrs. Hudson's hurried footsteps ascended the stairs, followed by a heavier yet distinctly purposeful tread. The door to our sitting-room opened, and our landlady, her face a mixture of concern and curiosity, announced, "A gentleman to see you, Mr. Holmes. Says it's a matter of the gravest importance. Lord Alaric Pendelton." The name Lord Alaric Pendelton was well known to me, a scholar of ancient astronomy and a collector of rare scientific instruments. The man who entered was indeed a gentleman of considerable stature, perhaps in his early 60s, with a distinguished mane of white hair and eyes that, even from across the room, betrayed a profound agitation. His velvet smoking jacket, though of the finest quality, was dishevelled, and a faint tremor ran through his hands as he clutched a silver-headed cane. "Mr. Holmes," he began, his voice a strained baritone, "I apologize for this unseasonable intrusion, but I assure you my predicament is of an extraordinary nature that I felt I had no recourse but to seek your unparalleled assistance immediately." Holmes, ever the master of the subtle assessment, gestured towards a chair. "Pray be seated, Lord Pendleton. You appear to have travelled from some distance. A glass of sherry, perhaps, to steady your nerves?" "No, thank you, Mr. Holmes." Lord Pendleton replied, though he gratefully sank into the offered seat, his gaze darting nervously about the room before settling on Holmes. "My mind is far too agitated for such pleasantries. I fear I have been the victim of a most peculiar and unsettling theft." "Indeed?" Holmes's voice was calm, almost languid, yet I detected the subtle shift in his posture, the almost imperceptible sharpening of his attention. "A theft, you say? Of what nature, Lord Pendleton?" Lord Pendleton took a deep, shuddering breath. "Of an instrument, Mr. Holmes, a singular creation, the Celestial Orrery of Eldoria." I exchanged a glance with Holmes. "An orrery?" While any theft was regrettable, this hardly seemed the sort of grand criminal enterprise that would rouse Holmes from his intellectual slumber, yet the man's genuine distress was palpable. Holmes, however, merely steepled his fingers, his expression unreadable. "An orrery, Lord Pendleton? And you deem this a matter of the gravest importance?" "Not merely an orrery, Mr. Holmes." Lord Pendleton exclaimed, leaning forward, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "This orrery, sir, is unique. It is believed to be over 2,000 years old, crafted by the legendary astronomers of Eldoria, a lost civilization. Its mechanisms are of a complexity unheard of, its spheres fashioned from unknown, shimmering metals that move with an ethereal grace, perfectly charting the heavens. It is said to pulse with an inner light, and its movements, so utterly unlike any other, are almost supernatural." "Fascinating," Holmes murmured, a genuine note of interest now in his tone. "And this unique creation has been stolen from your possession?" "From my private observatory, Mr. Holmes. A structure of reinforced granite and thick glass, secured by the most modern locks and a sophisticated pressure-sensitive floor alarm. Located at the very top of Pendleton Grange, miles from any public road. And yet, this morning, when my trusted curator, Master Silas Crumble, went to begin his daily observations, the central pedestal was empty, gone, vanished without a trace." "Without a trace, you say?" Holmes's eyes narrowed. "No forced entry? No broken locks? No disturbed alarm wires?" "None whatsoever." Lord Pendleton wrung his hands. "The windows were intact, the doors locked from the inside. The alarm system, which is connected directly to the local constabulary, showed no signs of activation. It is as if the orrery simply dematerialized." "Dematerialized, Lord Pendleton, is a concept more suited to the spiritualists than to the practicalities of criminal enterprise," Holmes said dryly. "However, a theft without apparent entry is indeed intriguing. Tell me, who knew of this orrery's presence in your observatory?" "Only a select few, Mr. Holmes. Myself, of course. My daughter, Lady Isolde Pendleton, who assists me with my research. My trusted curator, Master Crumble. And a rival astronomer of some renown, Professor Theron Vance, who had expressed a keen interest in studying its unique celestial computations." "Professor Theron Vance," Holmes repeated, a thoughtful frown creasing his brow. "I recall the name. A specialist in ancient astronomical devices, if my memory serves. Has he visited Pendleton Grange recently?" "He was a guest just last week," Lord Pendleton confirmed. "He spent several days examining the orrery, making precise measurements, taking notes. He was quite enthralled by it. He even offered a sum, a truly astronomical sum, I might add, for its acquisition. An offer I, of course, politely declined. The Celestial Orrery of Eldoria is a family heirloom, Mr. Holmes, not a commodity to be bought and sold." "And when did Professor Vance depart?" 3 days ago. He left by the morning train, expressing his profound admiration for its accuracy." "And since his departure, has anyone else had access to the observatory?" "Only Master Crumble for his daily duties of cleaning and preparing the instruments, and myself for my evening observations. No one else. We are quite isolated at Pendleton Grange. The staff are all long-serving and utterly trustworthy." Holmes leaned back, his gaze fixed on the ceiling, a sure sign that his formidable intellect was now fully engaged. "Lord Pendleton, you mentioned this orrery is said to pulse with an inner light and to chart the heavens with ethereal grace. What is its significance beyond its mechanical brilliance?" Lord Pendleton hesitated, his eyes flickering towards me. "Forgive me, Mr. Holmes, but this is a delicate matter. The orrery, it is believed to possess certain properties. Its movements, some say, can reveal the hidden patterns of destiny. Others whisper of a more esoteric influence." "Esoteric influence?" I interjected, my medical curiosity piqued. "What sort of influence?" Lord Pendleton shifted uncomfortably. "There is an old family legend, Dr. Watson. A rather fanciful tale, I assure you, but one that has persisted through the generations. It is said that the Celestial Orrery, when its light is observed by one of pure heart at the precise celestial conjunction, can grant a singular clarity of mind, a heightened perception. Some even claim it bestows a brief, fleeting glimpse into the future, particularly concerning matters of cosmic alignment." I scoffed. "Superstitious nonsense, Lord Pendleton. A mere machine, however intricate, cannot possess such powers." "Perhaps not, Dr. Watson," Lord Pendleton said, though his tone suggested he was not entirely convinced by his own dismissal. "But the legend persists, and it is this legend, I fear, that may have motivated the thief." Holmes, who had listened to this exchange with an almost detached interest, now spoke. "A legend, however improbable, can certainly provide a motive, Lord Pendleton, especially for those predisposed to believe in such things. Now let us return to the practicalities. Describe the observatory in detail." its dimensions, its layout, the location of the orrery's pedestal. Lord Pendelton, eager to provide any assistance, launched into a meticulous description of the observatory. It was a circular room, located in the highest tower of the Grange, with a retractable dome roof and heavy granite walls. The orrery was housed on a central, illuminated pedestal, its base secured by bolts. The room itself had no windows that opened, and its single heavy oak door was secured with multiple bolts and the pressure-sensitive alarm. "And the locks?" Holmes pressed. "Were they tampered with?" "No, Mr. Holmes. The oak door was locked from the inside, as always. Master Crumble, who has the only key in the code, found it so this morning. He unlocked it, entered, and found the pedestal empty." "Locked from the inside," Holmes repeated slowly, a new light dawning in his eyes. "This is indeed a curious detail. Tell me, Lord Pendelton, is there any other way into this observatory? A ventilation shaft, a hidden passage, a service tunnel?" Lord Pendelton shook his head vehemently. "Absolutely not. It was designed to be impenetrable. My life's work, my ancestors' legacy, was within." "And the key and code, Lord Pendelton, who possesses them?" "Only Master Crumble, as I said, and myself. He keeps them on a chain around his neck, and the code is memorized. He is a man of impeccable character, utterly devoted to the family. He has been with us for 30 years. A chain around his neck," Holmes mused. "And he would have been the first to discover the theft. Did he appear distressed?" "Profoundly so, Mr. Holmes. He was quite beside himself. He wept, I believe. He felt personally responsible." "Indeed. And what of your daughter, Lady Isolde Pendleton? What is her disposition towards this orrery and its legend?" Lord Pendleton hesitated again, a shadow crossing his features. "Isolde, she is a woman of a more romantic disposition, Mr. Holmes. She has always been rather fascinated by the old family tales. She believes, I think, in the orrery's power more readily than I do." "And her relationship with Professor Vance?" "Cordial, I suppose. They conversed at length about ancient civilizations and their astronomical beliefs during his visit. Isolde has always had a keen interest in historical artifacts and their mystical provenance." Holmes rose from his chair and walked to the window, peering out into the fog-shrouded street. "Lord Pendleton, this case, while superficially simple, presents several intriguing contradictions. A theft without apparent entry, a unique object of immense value, both scientific and to some mystical, and a limited circle of individuals with knowledge of its existence and impending conjunction. I confess my interest is piqued." A wave of relief washed over Lord Pendleton's face. "Then you will take the case, Mr. Holmes?" "Indeed. Watson, prepare your bag. We shall journey to Pendleton Grange at once." I nodded, already anticipating the familiar thrill of the chase. Holmes, invigorated by the prospect of a new challenge, was a man transformed. The ennui had vanished, replaced by that keen, almost predatory alertness that always preceded his most brilliant deductions. The game, as he would say, was most certainly afoot. Chapter 2. The Tower's Secret. The journey from the bustling heart of London to the secluded grandeur of Pendleton Grange was a long and rather uncomfortable one. The train rattled through the darkened countryside, its rhythmic clatter a monotonous backdrop to Holmes's silent cogitations. Lord Alaric Pendelton, still visibly agitated, offered little conversation, lost in his own anxieties and the profound distress of his recent loss. I, for my part, occupied myself with observing my esteemed companion, noting the subtle shifts in his expression, the occasional twitch of his eyebrow, the way his long, slender fingers drummed a silent tune on his knee, all indicators of a mind working at a furious pace, sifting through the meagre facts presented thus far. "Watson," he finally murmured, as the train slowed its approach to a small, desolate station swallowed by the vast, silent expanse of the countryside, the absence of forced entry, coupled with the intricate security of Lord Pendleton's observatory, suggests a method of ingress that defies conventional criminal enterprise. Either our thief possesses a skill bordering on the supernatural, or the means of entry was provided by one already within the confines of Pendleton Grange. The latter, I assure you, is far more likely." I considered this. "An inside job then, Holmes?" But Lord Pendleton spoke highly of his staff, particularly his curator, Master Silas Crumble, who has served the family for 30 years. "Loyalty, my dear Watson, is a virtue often tested by temptation, and sometimes by deeper, more complex motives." Holmes replied, his gaze distant. "The human heart is a labyrinth of desires, and avarice is but one of its many pathways. We must consider all possibilities, however unpalatable they may seem to our client." It was well past midnight when we finally arrived at the station, a solitary lamp casting a feeble circle of light upon the platform. A waiting carriage, a rather antiquated brougham, was our final conveyance. The drive through the winding, tree-lined lanes was shrouded in a thick, oppressive mist that seemed to cling to the very air, lending an ethereal, almost spectral quality to the ancient trees that loomed on either side. The silence of the countryside was profound, broken only by the muffled thud of the horses' hooves and the distant, mournful cry of an owl. Pendleton Grange itself was a formidable structure, a sprawling edifice of dark, weathered stone that seemed to absorb the meagre light of the moon. Its silhouette against the bruised sky was imposing, almost forbidding, its countless windows like vacant eyes staring out into the night. As we approached, a single light burned in the highest tower, a lonely beacon in the vast darkness, a stark contrast to the welcoming glow of our Baker Street abode. This, I surmised, was the observatory. We were met at the grand oak doors by a stern-faced butler, a man whose demeanour suggested he had seen far too many late-night disturbances. This was not the trusted curator, Master Crumble, but another, older servant. "Lord Pendelton, sir," he intoned, his voice flat. "Lady Isolde has retired. She left instructions that you were to be informed of the unfortunate incident, but that she wished not to be disturbed further tonight." Lord Alaric Pendelton merely nodded, his shoulders slumped. "Thank you, Mr. Fitzwilliam. Please show Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson to their rooms. We will require breakfast at 8, and I wish to proceed directly to the observatory immediately thereafter." Mr. Fitzwilliam, a man of few words, led us through dimly lit corridors, the silence of the house broken only by the soft padding of our footsteps and the occasional creak of ancient floorboards. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood, beeswax, and a faint, indefinable aroma that I could not quite place, something metallic, yet subtly earthy. Our rooms were comfortable if somewhat austere and offered a welcome respite from the journey. Holmes, however, showed no inclination for rest. He walked directly to the window, peering out into the mist-shrouded grounds. "Watson," he whispered, once Mr. Fitzwilliam had departed, "the scent. Did you notice it?" I sniffed the air. A faint, earthy smell, perhaps, like damp stone and something metallic? "Precisely," Holmes said, a glint in his eye. "A very specific metallic scent, Watson, one that lingers despite the hour and the distance from the observatory. It suggests a recent and significant presence of the very object of our search. The Celestial Orrery, I recall Lord Pendelton stating, is fashioned from unknown shimmering metals. Such ancient alloys often yield distinct olfactory signatures." "But how could it linger so strongly?" I asked, perplexed. "Unless the thief carried it through the house? Or," Holmes mused, "unless the orrery itself possesses a particularly potent emanation, one that adheres to the very fabric of the air. A detail Lord Pendelton neglected to mention, perhaps because he is so accustomed to it. A detail that could be highly significant." He then produced a small magnifying glass from his pocket and began to meticulously examine the carpet in the hallway outside our rooms, then the banister, and finally the very air itself, as if seeking invisible clues. I watched him, accustomed to his peculiar methods, knowing that even the most seemingly insignificant detail could unlock a hidden truth for his extraordinary mind. "Nothing conclusive here," he finally pronounced, straightening up. "But the scent is undeniable. It confirms the orrery was recently in this vicinity. Now, Watson, a few hours' rest. We shall require our wits about us in the morning." The next morning dawned grey and damp, the mist still clinging stubbornly to the grounds of Pendleton Grange. After a hasty breakfast, during which Holmes remained largely silent, consuming his toast and tea with an almost mechanical precision, we joined Lord Alaric Pendelton, who looked even more haggard than the previous evening. "The observatory awaits, gentlemen," he announced, leading us through a series of grand reception rooms, their heavy curtains still drawn against the morning light. The observatory itself was a revelation. It was a circular room, located at the very top of the highest tower, its heavy granite walls lined with ancient astronomical charts and shelves crammed with dusty scientific instruments. A massive, intricately carved central pedestal dominated the centre, its surface gleaming. The air here was heavy with the scent of old parchment, dust, and the same faint metallic earthiness I had detected earlier. The retractable dome roof, though currently closed, hinted at the celestial wonders it usually revealed. "The orrery was here," Lord Pendelton said, his voice thick with despair, pointing to the empty pedestal. "Now, nothing." Holmes immediately began his meticulous examination. He ignored the empty pedestal for a moment, instead focusing on the pressure-sensitive floor alarm surrounding it. He knelt, producing his magnifying glass, and scrutinized the finely polished granite tiles. "You said this was undisturbed, Lord Pendelton?" Holmes asked, his voice low. "Completely, Mr. Holmes. Not a single footprint, not a displaced speck of dust on the sensor plates. The alarm was not triggered." "Indeed," Holmes murmured, his eyes sweeping over the pristine surface. "Remarkable. And the air, Watson, the metallic scent is even stronger here, is it not?" I inhaled deeply. The earthy, metallic aroma was indeed more pronounced, almost cloying in its intensity. It was a rich, deep, yet subtly sharp scent, unlike any metal I had ever encountered. Holmes then turned his attention to the pedestal itself. He ran his gloved hand over its smooth, polished stone surface, then peered closely at the small indentations where the orrery's base would have been bolted. "The orrery was secured to the pedestal with bolts, I presume?" "Yes, Mr. Holmes. Heavy brass bolts set into the granite. They would require specialized tools to remove." Holmes nodded, then moved to the heavy oak door. He examined the multiple bolts, the intricate lock, and the surrounding granite frame. He tapped the wood, listened intently, and ran his fingers along the seams. "No hidden panels," he concluded. "No secret passages. The structure is sound, which brings us back to the central enigma. How did the orrery and its brass bolts depart this locked observatory without disturbing the environment or triggering the alarm?" He stood in the center of the room, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping slowly from floor to ceiling, as if willing the solution to materialize before his eyes. "Lord Pendelton," Holmes finally said, turning to our client, "you mentioned your trusted curator, Master Silas Crumble. I should like to speak with him." Master Silas Crumble was a man of precise movements and quiet efficiency, his face a study in controlled emotion. He arrived, his dark suit immaculate, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes, however, were red-rimmed, and his usual composure seemed to be barely held in check. "Master Crumble," Holmes began, his voice gentle but firm, "I understand you were the first to discover the absence of the Celestial Orrery this morning." "Yes, sir," Master Crumble replied, his voice a strained whisper. "It was a shock, it was. A terrible, terrible thing, his lordship's most prized possession." "Tell me, Master Crumble, your routine. What time do you arrive at the observatory each morning?" "Always at 6, sir." "Sharp, to check the instruments, dust the surfaces, prepare for the Lord's observations." "And you found the oak door to this observatory locked?" "Yes, sir, just as I left it last night, locked from the inside." "And you possess the only key and the code for the numerical lock?" "That's right, sir. The key is always on my chain. The code, I commit it to memory each night and clear it from my mind. No one else knows it, save for his lordship." He patted his chest, where a faint indentation was visible beneath his waistcoat, similar to the one I had seen on other trusted retainers. "Did you notice anything unusual last night, Master Crumble? Any sounds? Any lights?" Master Crumble frowned, thinking deeply. "No, sir, not a thing. The night was quiet as the grave. The mist, it was thick, mind you, swallowed up all sound." "And when you entered this morning, did you touch anything before you realized the orrery was gone?" "No, sir. I just saw the empty pedestal. My heart sank, sir. It truly did." Holmes observed Master Crumble closely, his eyes missing nothing. "Thank you, Master Crumble. That will be all for now. Please return to your duties if you are able." As Master Crumble departed, his shoulders still slumped with apparent grief, Holmes turned back to Lord Pendelton. "Lord Pendelton, I should now like to speak with Lady Isolde Pendelton." Lady Isolde Pendelton was a striking young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with a cascade of dark, lustrous hair and eyes that held a certain wistful depth. She received us in a smaller, more feminine drawing room, filled with delicate furniture and the scent of dried lavender. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she greeted us, her voice soft but clear. My father has informed me of your presence. This business with the orrery is truly distressing." "Indeed, Lady Isolde," Holmes replied, taking a seat opposite her. "Your father mentioned your particular interest in the Celestial Orrery and its associated legends." A faint, almost imperceptible blush touched her cheeks. "The legends are merely old wives' tales, Mr. Holmes, charming perhaps, but hardly to be taken seriously." Her denial, however, lacked conviction. "Yet you find them intriguing?" Holmes pressed gently. She sighed. "They are part of my family's history, Mr. Holmes. It is difficult not to be drawn into the romance of it all, to imagine an instrument that could grant such insight into matters of cosmic alignment." "And Professor Theron Vance," Holmes continued, his gaze unwavering. "You conversed with him during his visit?" "Yes, at length. He is a brilliant man, a true scholar of ancient astronomy. He was quite captivated by the Celestial Orrery." "Did he express any unusual interest in its properties beyond the purely scientific?" Lady Isolde hesitated, her eyes flickering away. He was certainly curious about the family history. He asked many questions about the legends, perhaps more than one would expect from a purely scientific mind." "Did he, Lady Isolde, ever suggest a means by which one might bypass the security of the observatory?" Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Holmes, what a preposterous suggestion! Professor Vance is a man of the highest integrity." "Indeed," Holmes said smoothly. "Forgive my directness, Lady Isolde. It is merely a process of elimination. The orrery vanished from a locked observatory, and the method of entry points to someone with intimate knowledge of the room's structure and a certain specialized skill." Lady Isolde composed herself. He certainly did not. He spoke only of his admiration for the orrery and his desire to acquire it through legitimate means. "And your own movements, Lady Isolde? Were you in the observatory at any point during the night of the theft?" "Good heavens, no. I retired to my chambers shortly after dinner and did not leave them until this morning. I heard nothing untoward." "Thank you, Lady Isolde," Holmes said, rising. "Your insights have been most helpful." As we left the drawing room, I turned to Holmes. "She seems genuinely surprised by the suggestion of Vance's involvement, and her denial of the legend's influence on her seemed rather unconvincing." "Indeed, Watson," Holmes murmured. "A woman of romantic temperament, as her father described. Such individuals often mask deeper, more complex motivations beneath a veneer of polite composure. Now, I believe a thorough examination of the observatory's exterior and perhaps the surrounding tower is in order. There is a curious inconsistency in Master Crumble's account that bears closer scrutiny." We returned to the observatory. The mist had begun to thin, revealing the manicured lawns and ancient trees surrounding the imposing grange. Holmes circled the tower slowly, his eyes sweeping over every detail, his hands occasionally touching the granite foundation, the very earth itself. He paid particular attention to the ground directly beneath the observatory's heavy granite walls. "Lord Pendelton," Holmes called out, "what is the purpose of these heavy granite blocks that form the base of the tower?" "They are merely structural, Mr. Holmes," Lord Pendelton replied, joining us. "Part of the original construction, centuries ago. They are fixed firmly into the earth." Holmes examined the granite, running his fingers along its cold, unyielding surface. He then knelt, his gaze fixed on a patch of damp earth directly beneath a section of the tower wall that appeared particularly seamless. He pointed to a faint, almost invisible indentation in the soil. "Watson," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "observe this, a very subtle impression. And here, another, and here." I knelt beside him. The indentations were indeed faint, but discernible, a series of shallow depressions as if something heavy had been repeatedly placed and then lifted. They led from the direction of the main house, along the side of the tower, and then seemed to stop directly beneath a large circular vent near the base. "A ladder, Watson," Holmes explained, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "A ladder, repeatedly placed against the side of the tower, directly beneath this vent. And observe the dust, Lord Pendelton. The dust on the vent cover, though minimal, is disturbed, as if something has recently been moved or brushed against it." Lord Pendelton, who had been observing with growing astonishment, now gasped. "But the vent, Mr. Holmes, it is sealed! It has not been opened in centuries." "Indeed, Lord Pendelton," Holmes said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "But a seal, however ancient, can be broken. and then, perhaps, resealed. Let us examine that vent more closely. He instructed Lord Pendelton to find a sturdy ladder, and within minutes we were ascending to the vent. The metal was tarnished and encrusted with years of grime, but Holmes ignored the dirt. He focused on the edges of the vent cover, the rivets, and the surrounding granite. "Here, Watson," he said, pointing to a minute scratch on one of the rivets. "A fresh mark. And here a faint smudge of what appears to be grease. And observe the dust, Lord Pendelton, the very subtle disturbance around the edges of the vent, almost imperceptible. It suggests a precise, controlled removal, not a violent smash." Lord Pendelton peered closely. "But it looks perfectly intact, Mr. Holmes." "To the casual eye, perhaps," Holmes conceded, "but not to the eye trained to observe the minutiae. The thief, Lord Pendelton, did not enter through the oak door. He entered through this vent. He removed the cover, gained access to a narrow shaft, ascended to the observatory, took the orrery, and then carefully replaced the cover, using fresh grease to conceal his method. But how could he have known about the vent's weakness?" Lord Pendelton exclaimed, "And how could he have replaced the cover so perfectly from the outside, from such a height?" "Ah, those are excellent questions, Lord Pendelton," Holmes said, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "Questions that lead us back to our limited circle of suspects, the individual who knew the layout of the observatory intimately, who knew of the orrery's presence, and who possessed the ingenuity to execute such a precise and audacious theft, and the knowledge, perhaps, of a specific tool that could remove ancient rivets with such precision." "Professor Vance," Lord Pendelton whispered, his face paling. "A strong candidate, certainly," Holmes agreed. "He had access, he had knowledge, and he had a motive. A scientific ambition, perhaps, or a belief in the orrery's more esoteric properties. A belief he may have feigned to dismiss. But there is another possibility, Lord Pendelton, one that is perhaps even more unsettling." He paused, allowing his words to hang in the air, creating a dramatic tension that was almost unbearable. "The thief, Lord Pendelton," Holmes continued, his voice dropping to a low, resonant tone, "possessed not only knowledge of the observatory's hidden weakness, but also a means to access it without arousing suspicion. A means that would allow them to move about the Grange and its grounds unseen, even in the dead of night." He turned to Lord Pendelton, his gaze piercing. "Tell me, Lord Pendelton, does your daughter, Lady Isolde, possess a particular affinity for clandestine activities, or perhaps a secret passion for engineering or ancient mechanisms that extends beyond casual interest?" Lord Pendelton stared at Holmes, his mouth agape, a look of profound shock spreading across his features. "Isolde? My daughter? Mr. Holmes, that is an outrageous accusation." "Is it, Lord Pendelton?" Holmes countered, his voice calm but insistent. "Consider the facts. She knew of the orrery's presence. She was fascinated by its legends. She was present in the Grange. And she possessed a motive, however irrational it may seem to us. The allure of a mystical power, particularly one that promises insight into cosmic alignment. Furthermore, the metallic scent of the orrery, so strong in the observatory, suggests it was handled by someone who lingered, not merely a fleeting passer-by. And the precise resealing of the vent from the outside requires a certain dexterity, a familiarity with such delicate work. But why?" Lord Pendelton stammered, clearly struggling to comprehend the implication. "Why would Isolde steal our own family heirloom?" "That, Lord Pendelton, is the core of the mystery," Holmes said, descending the ladder. "The why is often more complex than the how, but I believe we have established the how. Now we must uncover the motive and the full extent of this peculiar intrigue." He paused, looking back at the imposing Grange, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "This case, Watson, has just become considerably more interesting. I knew then that the intellectual torpor had been thoroughly banished. The hunt was on, and the scent of the Celestial Orrery, both literal and metaphorical, now led us down a path far more winding and perilous than any of us could have initially imagined. The game, as Holmes would say, was most certainly afoot. Chapter 4, The Cartographer's Shadow. The revelation of Master Silas Crumble's unrequited love and his manipulation by a shadowy cosmic cartographer had shifted the entire landscape of the case. Lord Alaric Pendelton, our client, stood utterly bewildered. His initial anger at his daughter, Lady Isolde, now replaced by a profound pity for her misguided actions and a dawning fury at the unseen hand that had exploited his trusted curator. The vast, silent grange, once a testament to Pendleton's lineage, now felt like a stage upon which a meticulously orchestrated drama of deceit had been played out. "A cosmic cartographer, Mr. Holmes?" Lord Pendleton stammered, his voice thick with disbelief. "But who? Who would stoop to such villainy, manipulating a loyal servant's affections for mere cosmic knowledge?" Holmes, his eyes gleaming with that familiar, almost predatory light, closed Master Crumble's journal and placed it carefully back in the drawer. "The motives of such individuals, Lord Pendleton, are rarely mere. They are often driven by a ruthless ambition that transcends conventional morality. This cartographer, I surmise, is a man who operates in the murky underworld of esoteric knowledge, preying upon the vulnerable and the ambitious, seeking to profit from the genius of others." I found myself recalling the fleeting impression of a rival's insidious calculation from Lady Isolde's feverish journal entry. It seemed that her subconscious, even in its delusion, had perceived a truth that her waking mind had dismissed. "Our immediate task, Watson," Holmes declared, turning from the desk, "is to identify this shadowy figure. Master Crumble, in his misguided devotion, has provided us with a crucial lead. His journal speaks of a secret correspondence, and a promise to facilitate the understanding and unlocking of the orrery's deeper powers. This suggests a specific individual, a known player in the illicit trade of ancient astronomical secrets." He then turned to Lord Alaric Pendelton. "Lord Pendleton, you mentioned a rival astronomer, Professor Theron Vance, who had expressed a keen interest in acquiring your orrery. Is it possible that he is connected to this cartographer, or perhaps is the cartographer himself?" Lord Pendleton frowned, considering this. "Vance is a ruthless competitor, Mr. Holmes, I will grant you that. He has often attempted to acquire the orrery through legitimate, albeit aggressive, means. But to resort to such underhanded tactics, to manipulate my curator, it seems beneath him, even for Vance." "The depths of human depravity, Lord Pendleton, are often surprisingly profound," Holmes countered. "However, we shall keep Professor Vance in mind. But our primary focus now must be on the information contained within this journal. Crumble, I believe, has unwittingly provided us with the key to unlocking this mystery." Holmes then instructed Lord Pendleton to ensure that Master Crumble remained unaware of our discovery of his journal and our suspicions. He also requested that Crumble be kept under close yet discreet observation, as he might unwittingly lead us to the cartographer. Our investigation now shifted from the quiet confines of Pendleton Grange to the bustling, often secretive, underworld of ancient artifact dealers and esoteric scholars in London. Holmes, with his vast network of informants and his unparalleled knowledge of the city's hidden currents, began to make inquiries. He dispatched a series of cryptic telegrams and spent hours poring over dusty ledgers in obscure antiquarian bookshops and whispering with his contacts in the city's various clubs and private societies. I, for my part, assisted Holmes by meticulously transcribing Master Crumble's journal, searching for any further clues, any names, dates, or locations that might shed light on the identity of the cosmic cartographer. The entries were a poignant testament to Crumble's desperate love for Lady Isolde, his naive belief that by stealing the orrery's secrets, he could somehow earn her affection and secure her destiny. His descriptions of the cartographer were vague, referring to him only as a man of profound knowledge, a master of celestial arrangements, and a silent guide to the stars. One particular entry, however, caught Holmes's eye. It spoke of a meeting in a secluded, dimly lit establishment known as the Astrolabe's Gaze, a private club frequented by astronomers, antiquarians, and those who dealt in the less scrupulous aspects of ancient knowledge. The entry mentioned a specific date, just a few days prior to the orrery's theft, and a time, midnight. "The Astrolabe's Gaze, Watson," Holmes murmured, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "A most appropriate name for such a den of intrigue. And a midnight meeting. Our shadowy cartographer, it seems, prefers to operate under the cloak of darkness." He then produced a small, exquisitely crafted miniature orrery from his pocket, a tiny silver sphere, no larger than a thimble, its planetary rings folded neatly. "This, Watson, is a replica of the Celestial Orrery, A gift, I imagine, from Lord Pendelton to Lady Isolde. It possesses a unique internal mechanism, a subtle signature of Eldorian craftsmanship. I believe it will serve as our bait. "Bait, Holmes?" I asked, perplexed. "Indeed, Watson," he replied, a faint smile touching his lips. "The cartographer, having secured the Orrery's secrets, will undoubtedly seek to verify their authenticity to ensure that Master Crumble has delivered the genuine article. This replica, with its subtle imperfections and its unique internal signature, will serve as a test. If the cartographer is truly as cunning as I suspect, he will attempt to acquire this replica, believing it to be a crucial component in verifying the stolen secrets." Our plan was set. That evening, as London settled into its nocturnal hum, Holmes and I made our way to the Astrolabe's Gaze. The club was a dimly lit, smoke-filled establishment, its air thick with the scent of old books, pipe tobacco, and the faint metallic tang of ancient instruments. The clientele were a distinguished, if somewhat eccentric, lot, their faces etched with the strains of their arduous scholarly pursuits. We secured a small, secluded table in a corner, from which we could observe the comings and goings without drawing undue attention. Holmes, disguised as a grizzled old antiquarian, his face smudged with dust and his hands calloused, blended seamlessly with the surroundings. I, for my part, adopted the demeanour of a quiet, unassuming scholar, sipping a lukewarm sherry and feigning interest in a tattered astronomical almanac. Hours passed, marked only by the hushed conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the occasional burst of whispered debate over ancient texts. Holmes remained utterly still, his eyes, though seemingly vacant, missing nothing. He observed the subtle gestures, the whispered confidences, the fleeting glances that spoke volumes to his trained eye. Just as the clock struck midnight, a figure entered the club, and a hush, almost imperceptible, fell over the room. He was a man of imposing stature, impeccably dressed in a dark, tailored suit, his features sharp and angular, his eyes cold and calculating. He moved with an air of quiet authority, his presence commanding immediate if unspoken respect. He carried a slim leather portfolio, and his gaze swept over the room with a chilling intensity. "That, Watson," Holmes whispered, his voice barely a breath, "is our man, Professor Theron Vance." My jaw dropped. Professor Theron Vance! Lord Pendleton's rival astronomer, the man who had expressed such keen interest in the orrery. The shock was so profound that I almost choked on my sherry. "Vance?" I whispered, utterly bewildered. But he was the rival. He was a guest at the Grange." "Indeed, Watson," Holmes murmured, a grim smile touching his lips. "The most cunning villains, my dear fellow, often hide in plain sight. They create elaborate deceptions, casting themselves as legitimate rivals to divert suspicion and to gain access to the very individuals who might expose them. Vance, I now surmise, orchestrated the theft of the Celestial Orrery himself, using Master Crumble's misguided affection as a cover, and then sought our assistance to recover it, thereby gaining insight into our methods and perhaps to eliminate any potential threats to his true operations. Vance moved to a secluded booth in the far corner, where a smaller, nervous-looking man was already waiting. The man, whom I recognized as a minor antiquarian known for his desperate financial straits, immediately rose and bowed deferentially. Vance merely gestured for him to sit, his expression cold and unreadable. Holmes, with a subtle nod, indicated that I should remain where I was. He then rose and, with a casual air, walked towards the bar, ordering another sherry. As he did so, he deliberately brushed past Vance's booth, allowing the miniature Celestial Orrery to slip from his pocket and fall silently to the floor, coming to rest just beneath Vance's chair. Vance, engrossed in his conversation, did not notice, but as Holmes returned to our table, he cast a quick, almost imperceptible glance towards the fallen orrery. A flicker of something, recognition, surprise, crossed his cold features. Minutes later, Vance concluded his conversation. He rose, and as he did so, his foot nudged the miniature orrery. He bent down, picked it up, and examined it with a keen, almost predatory interest. His eyes narrowed, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He then slipped the automaton into his pocket, his gaze sweeping over the room, lingering for a moment on Holmes and myself. It was a look of chilling intelligence, a silent challenge. "He has taken the bait, Watson," Holmes whispered, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "He recognizes the orrery's unique signature. He believes it to be a key to verifying the stolen secrets, perhaps even a prototype of some crucial component. He will now, I suspect, attempt to acquire the full knowledge from us, or perhaps to eliminate us as a potential threat to his operations. He then rose. "Come, Watson, our work here is done. We have identified our cosmic cartographer, and now the true game begins." As we left the astrolabe's gaze, stepping back into the cold, fog-shrouded streets, I felt a profound sense of unease. Professor Theron Vance, the seemingly respectable scholar, the rival-turned-villain, was a far more dangerous adversary than any we had encountered before. His deception was meticulously crafted, his ruthlessness chilling. The shadow of the cartographer, I knew, was long and insidious, and its true depths remained to be plumbed. The Celestial Orrery, once a symbol of Eldorian wisdom, was now a pawn in a far more perilous game, and Holmes, I sensed, was about to lead us into its very heart. Chapter 5. The Cartographer's Trap. The cold, fog-shrouded streets outside the astrolabe's gaze offered little comfort as Holmes and I emerged from the club. The revelation of Professor Theron Vance's true identity, not as a rival scholar but as the cunning cosmic cartographer, had sent a chill far deeper than the November air. The man who had feigned academic interest and sought Lord Pendelton's trust was in fact the orchestrator of the very crime we were investigating. His audacity was breathtaking, his ruthlessness chilling. "He has taken the bait, Watson," Holmes murmured, his voice grim, as we hailed a passing hansom cab. He recognized the orrery's unique signature in the replica. He knows we possess knowledge of his operations. He will now, I surmise, attempt to acquire the full secrets from us, or more likely to eliminate us as a threat. I felt a profound sense of unease. But why, Holmes? Why reveal himself to us in such a manner? Why not simply attempt to acquire the orrery's secrets through other means? "Because, my dear Watson, Vance is a man of immense ego," Holmes replied, his eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "He enjoys the game, he revels in his own cunning, and by casting himself as a legitimate rival, by allowing us to be brought into the case, he gained invaluable insight into our methods, into the very workings of my mind. He believed he could outmaneuver us, use us to his own ends, and then perhaps dispose of us when we had served our purpose." The cab rattled through the labyrinthine streets towards Baker Street. Holmes, now fully engaged, produced a small, leather-bound notebook and began to make rapid entries, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Vance's network, Watson, must be extensive," he mused. "He operates in the shadows of the esoteric world, preying upon desperate scholars and ambitious curators. He has, no doubt, a network of informants, of agents, who assist him in his illicit trade. We must anticipate his next move." Upon our return to 221B, Holmes immediately retired to his chemical laboratory, a small cluttered sanctum where he performed his more arcane analyses. I heard the faint clinking of glassware, the soft hiss of a Bunsen burner, and the occasional, almost inaudible murmur as he worked. For nearly an hour, the only sounds were these, and the persistent scratching of my pen as I attempted to transcribe the day's events into my journal, my thoughts still reeling from the shocking revelation of Vance's treachery. Finally, Holmes emerged, his eyes gleaming with that familiar, almost feverish intensity that always signaled a significant breakthrough. He held a small glass vial containing a few drops of a clear, viscous liquid. "Watson," he announced, his voice low and resonant, "the game, my dear fellow, has entered its most perilous phase. I have been examining the residue left on the miniature orrery. It contains traces of a rare, highly potent soporific, a powerful sedative. This, I surmise, was intended for us." My blood ran cold. "A sedative? You mean he intended to drug us?" "Precisely," Holmes affirmed. "Vance, having identified us as a threat, would not resort to crude violence. He would prefer a more subtle, more elegant solution, a drugged incapacitation followed by a quiet disappearance. He would then gain access to my notes, to your journal, and to any information we had gathered regarding his operations." He then produced a small, folded piece of paper from his pocket. "This, Watson, was slipped under our door while we were at the astrolabe's gaze. A note, seemingly from Lord Alaric Pendelton, requesting our immediate presence at Pendleton Grange. A matter of the gravest urgency, it claims. A trap, Watson, a meticulously laid trap." "A trap?" I exclaimed, my hand instinctively going to my revolver. "Indeed," Holmes said, a grim smile touching his lips. Vance, having acquired the replica orrery, will now attempt to lure us to a secluded location where he can incapacitate us and secure his position. Pendleton Grange, being isolated and familiar to us, is the perfect setting for his nefarious plan. So what is our next move, Holmes? We play along, Watson, Holmes replied, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. We walk into the lion's den, but we do so with our eyes wide open and with a few surprises of our own. Vance believes he has the advantage of surprise. We shall disabuse him of that notion. He then outlined his counterplan. It was audacious, relying on precision, timing, and a deep understanding of Vance's arrogant overconfidence. He instructed me to prepare a strong, stimulating tonic, a counteragent to the soporific he suspected Vance would attempt to administer. He also arranged for a discreet signal to be sent to Inspector Lestrade, informing him of a potential disturbance at Pendleton Grange, but only to be acted upon after a specific period of time had elapsed. We must allow Vance to believe his plan is unfolding perfectly, Watson, Holmes explained. We must allow him to reveal his full hand. Only then can we truly unmask him and secure the evidence necessary for his downfall. The journey back to Pendleton Grange was undertaken with a heightened sense of tension. The countryside, usually a place of quiet tranquility, was now eerily silent in the pre-dawn hours, its ancient trees mere silhouettes against the bruised sky. The fog, though thinner, still clung to the ground, lending an ethereal quality to the deserted lanes. We arrived at Pendleton Grange, its grand oak doors looming ominously in the gloom. As Holmes had predicted, the doors were slightly ajar, a subtle invitation. The pressure-sensitive alarm, he surmised, had been disarmed. A most welcoming gesture, Watson, Holmes murmured, a faint smile touching his lips. Vance is confident. Overconfident, I dare say. We entered the Grange, the vast silent halls feeling strangely oppressive in the dim light. The scent of old wood and beeswax was still pervasive, but now mingled with a faint, almost imperceptible aroma of almonds, a telltale sign of certain chemical compounds. The air, Watson, Holmes whispered, sniffing. A subtle diffusion. He has already begun his work. We moved cautiously through the Grange, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpets. The observatory at the top of the highest tower was our destination. The ascent was long and silent, the winding staircase seeming to stretch endlessly into the darkness. Suddenly a voice, cold and precise, echoed from the top of the tower. "Good evening, gentlemen. I trust you found my invitation compelling?" Professor Theron Vance emerged from the gloom, impeccably dressed as always, his features sharp and angular, his eyes cold and calculating. He held a small, ornate pistol in his gloved hand, its barrel glinting ominously in the dim light. Behind him, two hulking figures, Vance's enforcers, stepped out from the shadows, their faces grim, their hands clenched into fists. "Professor Vance," Holmes said, his voice calm, yet imbued with an undeniable authority. "A rather dramatic entrance, I must say, though somewhat lacking in originality." Vance chuckled, a dry, humourless sound. "Indeed, Mr. Holmes, but effective, I assure you. You are a formidable opponent, I will grant you that. Your deductions regarding the Celestial Orrery were most illuminating, but you have meddled in affairs far beyond your comprehension. The world of ancient astronomical secrets is a far more ruthless arena than your quaint criminal investigations." "And your methods, Professor," Holmes countered, "are as crude as they are predictable. Drugging your opponents, a rather uninspired tactic, even for a man of your supposed intellect." Vance's eyes narrowed. "You speak with remarkable confidence, Mr. Holmes, for a man who is about to succumb to the effects of a potent soporific. The air in this observatory has been subtly infused for the past hour. You should be feeling its effects by now. I felt a sudden wave of dizziness, a slight blurring of my vision. The air, indeed, felt heavy and my limbs seemed to grow sluggish. Vance's enforcers began to advance, their movements slow and deliberate. "Indeed, Professor," Holmes said, his voice now slightly slurred, his eyes drooping. He swayed slightly, and I felt a sudden urge to sit down, to simply close my eyes and rest. "A most effective compound." Vance smiled, a triumphant, predatory grin. "Excellent. The great Sherlock Holmes brought low by a simple chemical compound. Now, gentlemen, if you would be so kind as to surrender your notes, and then perhaps take a long, permanent rest." His enforcers moved in, their hands reaching for us. Just as they closed in, Holmes, with a sudden, almost miraculous burst of energy, straightened up, his eyes snapping open, blazing with a keen, unwavering intensity. His earlier slurring vanished, replaced by a sharp, clear voice. "A rather theatrical performance, Professor Vance," Holmes declared, a triumphant smile now playing on his lips. "But you underestimate the resilience of the human constitution, particularly when fortified by a timely antidote. Watson, the tonic, if you please." With a swift movement, I produced the small vial of stimulating tonic Holmes had prepared. I uncorked it and, with a quick gulp, swallowed its contents. The dizziness vanished, replaced by a surge of clarity and renewed vigour. Vance's triumphant grin vanished, replaced by a look of utter shock and fury. "What? Impossible! You were drugged!" "A mere feint, Professor," Holmes said, his voice ringing through the observatory. "A carefully orchestrated deception, designed to lure you into a false sense of security. You believed you had outmanoeuvred us. In truth, you merely walked into our trap." He then pointed to a small lab, almost invisible, device he had concealed beneath his sleeve. It was a miniature, highly sensitive barometer designed to detect subtle changes in air pressure. "The moment you began to infuse the air with your soporific, Professor Vance, this device alerted me. Your subtle diffusion was, to my instruments, a blatant declaration of intent." Vance roared in frustration, raising his pistol. His enforcers, momentarily stunned, now lunged forward. "Now, Watson," Holmes commanded. "The signal!" With a swift movement, I produced a small prearranged signal flare from my pocket and ignited it. A brilliant crimson light shot upwards, piercing the retractable dome and illuminating the fog-shrouded sky above Pendleton Grange. Vance, seeing the flare, cursed loudly. "The police, you fool! You've brought the police!" "Indeed, Professor Vance," Holmes said, stepping forward, his eyes fixed on the enraged cartographer. "And they will be here shortly. Your reign of esoteric manipulation, your exploitation of desperate scholars, and your ruthless pursuit of ill-gotten knowledge ends tonight." Vance, his face contorted with fury, aimed his pistol at Holmes. But before he could fire, Holmes, with a sudden, blinding speed, lunged forward, his long, slender fingers closing around Vance's wrist. There was a sharp crack, and the pistol clattered to the floor. Vance cried out in pain, his face paling. His two enforcers, seeing their leader disarmed, hesitated. I, meanwhile, had drawn my own revolver, its cold metal a reassuring weight in my hand. Just then the distant wail of police sirens echoed through the fog, growing steadily louder. Vance's face sagged in defeat. His elaborate deception, his cunning manipulation had finally unravelled. Moments later, the heavy oak door of the observatory burst open, and Inspector Lestrade, followed by a contingent of constables, rushed in, their truncheons drawn. "Holmes! Watson! What in blazes is going on here?" Lestrade exclaimed, his gaze sweeping over the scene. "A rather intricate case of ancient astronomical fraud, Lestrade," Holmes replied, his voice calm, as he held Vance firmly by the wrist. "And a most cunning cosmic cartographer who believed himself beyond the reach of the law. I believe you will find Professor Theron Vance and his associates to be quite illuminating, once they have had a moment to reflect upon their folly." Lestrade, though still bewildered, quickly took charge. Vance and his enforcers were secured, their portfolios confiscated, and the observatory thoroughly examined for evidence. Lord Alaric Pendelton, alerted by the commotion, soon arrived, his face a mixture of shock and profound relief. Lady Isolde Pendleton and Master Silas Crumble, bewildered but unharmed, were also brought to the observatory, where Holmes, with a gentle hand, explained the true nature of Vance's treachery. The Celestial Orrery, the object of so much intrigue, was found hidden in a secret compartment within Vance's portfolio, its shimmering spheres gleaming, its tiny mechanisms seeming to watch the unfolding drama with silent, ethereal judgment. It was returned to Lord Alaric Pendelton, who clutched it to his chest, his eyes filled with gratitude. The case of the Celestial Orrery, I knew then, was truly closed. The shadow of the cartographer, once long and insidious, had been dispelled by the sharp light of Holmes's intellect. Chapter 6. The Unveiling of the Mastermind. The observatory, moments before a scene of tense confrontation, now buzzed with the controlled chaos of a police investigation. Inspector Lestrade, his usual bluster, replaced by a rare look of impressed bewilderment, oversaw the securing of Professor Theron Vance and his enforcers. The air, still faintly tinged with the soporific's almond scent, slowly cleared as the retractable dome was opened to the pre-dawn chill. My own heart, though no longer pounding with the immediate threat of danger, still raced with the after-effects of the stimulating tonic and the sheer audacity of Vance's scheme. To think that the very man who had sought Lord Pendelton's trust was the orchestrator of the crime, and that he had meticulously laid a trap for Holmes and myself, was a testament to his cunning, and to Holmes's even greater intellect. Holmes, having secured Vance's wrist and ensured his pistol was out of reach, now turned his attention to the Celestial Orrery. It lay nestled in the secret compartment of Vance's portfolio, its shimmering spheres gleaming in the harsh light of Lestrade's lantern. "A most exquisite piece of ancient engineering, Lestrade," Holmes observed, his voice calm, yet imbued with a quiet triumph. "And the object of a rather intricate case of ancient astronomical fraud." Lestrade, still grappling with the full implications, merely grunted. "Ancient astronomical fraud, Holmes? And Professor Vance, the respectable scholar? This is a fine mess you've landed us in." "On the contrary, Lestrade," Holmes replied, a faint smile touching his lips, "I believe I have merely untangled a knot of deceit that has plagued this esoteric quarter for some time. Professor Theron Vance is not merely a respectable scholar. He is a cunning cosmic cartographer, preying upon the genius of others and manipulating the vulnerable for his own illicit gain." He then explained, with concise brilliance, the entire convoluted plot. Master Silas Crumble's unrequited love for Lady Isolde, his naive attempt to win her affection by stealing the Orrery's secrets, and Vance's insidious manipulation of Crumble for his own ends. He detailed the hidden vent, the precise rivet removal, the soporific in the air, and Vance's audacious trap. Lord Alaric Pendelton, alerted by the commotion, soon arrived, his face a mixture of shock and profound relief as he saw his beloved orrery unharmed in Holmes's hands. Lady Isolde Pendleton and Master Silas Crumble, bewildered but unharmed, were also brought to the observatory. Master Crumble, confronted with the evidence of his journal and Vance's treachery, broke down, weeping openly. Lady Isolde, though initially stunned, quickly grasped the magnitude of Vance's manipulation, and a look of profound pity rather than anger settled upon her features as she looked at Crumble. "So, the rival's insidious calculation," Lady Isolde perceived, I mused aloud, "was not some abstract cosmic force, but Vance all along." "Precisely, Watson," Holmes affirmed. "Vance, through his network of informants, would have known of Lord Pendleton's latest acquisition, its revolutionary insights, and its immense value to those who sought to exploit ancient knowledge. He would also have been aware of Master Crumble's infatuation with Lady Isolde, and his desperate desire to prove himself. It was a perfect opportunity for a man of Vance's ruthless ambition." He then turned to Vance, who stood sullenly, his face a mask of defeat. "Your network, Professor Vance, will now be exposed. Your informants, your agents, your illicit trade, all will come to light. The Celestial Orrery, far from being a tool for your profit, has become the instrument of your downfall." Vance, his eyes blazing with a final flicker of defiance, merely sneered. "You may have won this skirmish, Holmes, but the universe of secrets is vast. There will always be those who seek to profit from the wisdom of the ancients. You cannot stop the pursuit of true knowledge." "True knowledge, Professor," Holmes countered calmly, "is built upon integrity and honest scholarship, not upon theft and manipulation. Your methods are not knowledge. They are a blight upon the very spirit of discovery." Lestrade, having heard enough, stepped forward. "Take them away, lads, and make sure you search every inch of this observatory for any further evidence. Holmes, I'll need a full report from you at the yard first thing in the morning." "Indeed, Lestrade," Holmes replied, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. "I shall be delighted to provide you with every detail. The nuances of this case, I assure you, are quite illuminating." As Vance and his enforcers were led away, their figures disappearing into the pre-dawn fog, a sense of quiet triumph settled upon the observatory. Lord Alaric Pendelton clutched his Celestial Orrery to his chest, his eyes filled with gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. Lady Isolde Pendleton, with a gentle hand, attempted to comfort the distraught Master Silas Crumble, whose misguided love had led him down such a perilous path. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The police investigation, guided by Holmes's unparalleled insights, quickly dismantled Vance's network of esoteric scholars and illicit antiquarians. Several other collectors who had fallen prey to Vance's schemes came forward, their stories corroborating Holmes's deductions. The Celestial Orrery's secrets were secured, its future now safe in Lord Pendelton's capable hands. Master Silas Crumble, though facing charges for his involvement in the theft, received a lenient sentence due to his manipulation by Vance and his genuine remorse. Lady Isolde Pendleton, touched by his misguided devotion, vowed to help him rebuild his life, perhaps even to continue his curatorship under her father's guidance, albeit under stricter supervision. Pendleton Grange, though still a place of ancient history, seemed to breathe a little easier. The shadow of the cosmic cartographer, once long and insidious, had been dispelled by the sharp light of Holmes's intellect. Our final evening at Baker Street, after the last reports had been filed and the last details confirmed, was a quiet affair. Holmes sat in his armchair, his pipe emitting a fragrant plume of smoke, a rare look of contentment on his face. I, for my part, meticulously recorded the final details of the case of the Celestial Orrery in my journal, aware that it would stand as another testament to my friend's extraordinary genius. Watson, Holmes mused, without looking up from his contemplation of the fire, the human mind, in its boundless capacity for both creation and corruption, remains the most fascinating subject of all. Vance, for all his cunning, ultimately underestimated the power of truth and the unwavering dedication of those who seek it. Indeed, Holmes, I replied, closing my journal, a most intricate case. It reminds us that even in the most ancient of settings, the timeless vices of greed and ambition continue to drive men to extraordinary lengths. He then leaned forward, a familiar glint in his eye. The world, my dear fellow, is filled with such shadows, lurking not only in the bustling streets of London, but in the quiet halls of scholarship, and within the very fabric of seemingly respectable society. Our work, therefore, is never truly done, for as long as there are those who seek to exploit the wisdom of others, who mistake cunning for intellect, or who pursue power through deceit, the game, Watson, will always be afoot. And with that, he settled back, his gaze already distant, no doubt contemplating the next intricate puzzle that the vast, enigmatic city of London would inevitably present. Thank you so much for listening to our Honouring Audiobooks original Sherlock Holmes adventure. We hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to leave a comment letting us know which story you'd like to hear next and where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from our detective fans around the world. See you in the next adventure.